Tonight, we travel back nearly 2,000 years to awaken in Rome, a crowded capital filled with workers, merchants, slaves, officials, immigrants, soldiers, and visitors. This is not only the Rome of emperors, marble temples, victorious generals, and powerful senators familiar from monuments and historical dramas. It is also a city of bakers rising before dawn, tenants climbing dark stairways, laborers searching for work, and vendors preparing food beside noisy streets. Daily life depended greatly upon wealth, citizenship, gender, legal status, occupation, family background, and whether a person was free or enslaved. A wealthy household might occupy a spacious residence decorated with mosaics, fountains, gardens, paintings, and rooms designed to impress important guests. A poor family might rent a small room high inside a crowded apartment building where water, privacy, cooking space, and personal safety remained limited. Between these extremes lived artisans, shopkeepers, soldiers, teachers, freed people, clerks, traders, and countless others who kept the enormous city functioning. Rome offered public fountains, baths, markets, temples, entertainment, employment, and social connections unavailable in most rural communities. It also contained smoke, traffic, waste, disease, dangerous buildings, inequality, crime, and a population constantly competing for space and opportunity. As the first light reaches the tiled roofs, we enter the streets to discover what an ordinary day in ancient Rome was really like. The kind of home a Roman occupied revealed social position before its resident had spoken a single word. Wealthy families could live in private houses known as domus, arranged around internal spaces that brought light, air, and rainwater into the building. Visitors entered through a narrow passage leading toward an atrium where the owner received clients and displayed wealth, family history, and social importance. Bedrooms were often smaller than modern expectations, while reception and dining rooms received more decoration because guests would see and judge them. Some elite homes contained painted walls, patterned floors, fountains, gardens, sculptures, libraries, kitchens, private baths, and separate areas for enslaved workers. Most city residents, however, lived in multi-story apartment buildings, commonly called insulae, where rent generally became cheaper on the higher floors. Upper rooms could be cramped, hot in summer, cold in winter, and difficult to reach through narrow stairways carrying little natural light. Poor construction, wooden floors, open flames, crowded rooms, and limited water made apartment fires a constant source of anxiety. Buildings could also collapse when owners used weak materials, added unsafe floors, or neglected repairs in pursuit of greater rental income. For many Romans, home was less a peaceful retreat than a place to sleep, store possessions, and shelter briefly from the city outside. Rome's aqueducts carried water over long distances, supplying fountains, baths, wealthy homes, public buildings, gardens, workshops, and other parts of urban life. Most residents did not have private pipes, so they collected water from public fountains and carried heavy containers through streets and stairways. The streets were crowded with pedestrians, merchants, animals, carts, construction materials, processions, beggars, messengers, and people conducting business in doorways. Stepping stones allowed pedestrians to cross certain roads without placing their feet directly into mud, standing water, refuse, and animal waste. Traffic regulations limited some wheeled movement during the day, which meant carts could rumble through the streets while residents attempted to sleep. Public toilets existed and sometimes encouraged conversation, although they offered little privacy by modern standards and depended upon shared seating arrangements. Sewers removed some waste and stormwater, but their existence did not make the entire city clean or eliminate the danger of contamination. Residents could empty unpleasant material into streets or drains, while businesses produced smoke, odors, scraps, wastewater, and other urban pollution. Crowded neighborhoods created ideal conditions for parasites and infectious disease, especially when food, animals, waste, and people occupied the same limited spaces. Rome's engineering was impressive, but daily cleanliness still depended greatly upon wealth, location, infrastructure, servants, and individual access to water. Most Romans began the day with a simple meal rather than the extravagant banquet commonly associated with imperial luxury. Breakfast might consist of bread, cheese, olives, fruit, leftovers, or porridge eaten quickly before work and daily obligations began. Grain remained the foundation of the urban diet, and bread appeared in many forms shaped by quality, price, ingredients, and the skill of the baker. Poor citizens could depend upon public grain distributions, although receiving grain did not provide every ingredient necessary for a healthy diet. Markets and street vendors sold vegetables, beans, lentils, fish, sausages, prepared dishes, wine, fruit, nuts, oil, and other foods throughout the city. Because refrigeration did not exist, shoppers often purchased small quantities and relied upon drying, salting, smoking, fermenting, or preserving goods in honey. Meat was expensive for many families, although religious sacrifices, festivals, taverns, and particular occupations occasionally made it more available. Wine was widely consumed but was commonly mixed with water, while quality ranged from prestigious vintages to cheap products ordinary laborers could afford. Familiar ingredients such as tomatoes, potatoes, corn, chocolate, and refined modern sugar had not yet entered the Roman kitchen. What a Roman ate was therefore determined less by exotic imperial recipes than by income, season, neighborhood, occupation, and access to markets. Business commonly began early because daylight was valuable, and many activities slowed after the morning hours. Workshops opened directly onto streets, allowing passers-by to watch bakers, metalworkers, cobblers, potters, carpenters, cloth workers, and other artisans perform their trades. A small shop might also serve as the owner's home, placing family life, production, storage, sales, and sleeping space beneath the same roof. Laborers gathered where employers could hire them for construction, loading, transportation, cleaning, agricultural work, or whatever temporary tasks were available. Skilled occupations offered greater security, but illness, economic change, fire, competition, or the loss of a patron could still destroy a household's income. Women worked as merchants, textile producers, midwives, entertainers, innkeepers, vendors, domestic workers, and participants in family businesses. Enslaved people performed a vast range of labor, from mining and agriculture to teaching, accounting, medicine, cooking, cleaning, and government administration. Freed people often entered trades or businesses connected to skills acquired during enslavement, although their former status continued to shape social relationships. The city depended upon workers whose names rarely appeared in historical accounts, but whose labor supplied food, water, clothing, transport, construction, and sanitation. Behind every marble monument stood quarries, ships, workshops, carts, tools, injuries, and countless hours of human effort. As the morning developed, the Roman Forum and surrounding districts filled with citizens conducting political, legal, religious, financial, and social business. Magistrates, lawyers, petitioners, merchants, clients, officials, messengers, and curious observers moved among temples, basilicas, monuments, and public speaking platforms. Wealthy patrons received clients who visited in the morning to offer respect, request assistance, exchange information, or strengthen useful relationships. In return, a patron might provide food, money, legal help, introductions, employment, or protection within Rome's competitive social system. A large procession of clients following an important man through the streets visibly demonstrated his influence to everyone watching. Court cases attracted audiences because legal disputes combined public drama, skilled speaking, personal rivalry, and consequences for property or reputation. News traveled through announcements, inscriptions, letters, gossip, speeches, taverns, markets, and conversations rather than newspapers in the modern sense. People visited money changers, arranged contracts, purchased property, collected debts, and negotiated commercial partnerships across the busy central districts. Political participation was never equal, and the power of elite men greatly exceeded that of poor citizens, women, foreigners, freed people, and slaves. The Forum presented Rome as a city of law and civic order, while its crowds revealed the personal influence and inequality beneath those ideals. The Roman household included not only parents and children, but also relatives, dependents, enslaved workers, freed people, and others connected to family property. At its legal center stood the pater familias, the senior male who possessed extensive authority over household decisions, property, marriages, and family relationships. In practice, personalities, wealth, age, affection, custom, and negotiation influenced how completely that formal authority shaped daily life. Marriage connected families economically and socially, making it far more than a private relationship between two individuals. Elite marriages could support alliances, careers, inheritance plans, and political ambitions, while ordinary families also considered property and economic security. Roman women could manage households, influence family decisions, attend social events, conduct certain business activities, and own property under particular legal arrangements. Their freedom nevertheless remained restricted by social expectations and legal structures designed largely around male authority. Divorce was possible and relatively accessible during some periods, although the social and financial consequences varied according to status and circumstance. Family affection appears in surviving letters, inscriptions, portraits, and memorials expressing grief for spouses, parents, children, and loyal household members. Roman family life combined emotional bonds with law, inheritance, labor, status, religion, and the practical need to preserve the household across generations. Childhood in Rome could be loving and playful, but it was also marked by high mortality, early responsibility, and enormous differences between social classes. Infants faced disease, poor sanitation, limited medical knowledge, malnutrition, and complications that modern treatment might prevent. Families protected children with amulets, prayers, rituals, practical care, and whatever medical assistance their circumstances allowed. Roman children played with dolls, balls, hoops, knucklebones, toy animals, miniature vehicles, and games recognizable to children in many historical periods. A wealthy boy might study reading, writing, arithmetic, literature, rhetoric, and Greek under teachers or educated household slaves. Girls from prosperous families could also receive education, particularly when literacy and cultural knowledge improved their household or social prospects. Poor children had fewer opportunities for formal schooling and often learned through work performed beside parents, employers, or skilled craftspeople. Enslaved children might be trained for domestic service, skilled occupations, entertainment, administration, or physically punishing forms of labor. As children grew, clothing, education, religious ceremonies, and public rituals marked their gradual movement toward adult expectations. Roman childhood was not simply a smaller version of adult life, but it ended earlier for many children whose families depended upon their work. Slavery shaped almost every part of Roman society, from agriculture and mining to homes, workshops, education, entertainment, and public administration. Enslaved people entered the Roman world through warfare, birth, piracy, trade, exposure, debt in earlier periods, and other forms of coercion. Their experiences varied widely, but none possessed the basic freedom to choose an employer, leave a household, or control life on equal legal terms. An educated household slave might teach children or maintain accounts, while another person could endure brutal conditions in a mine, farm, mill, or workshop. Domestic proximity to wealthy owners did not remove the possibility of punishment, sexual exploitation, family separation, sale, or sudden loss of security. Enslaved people formed friendships, families, religious communities, and personal identities despite laws that treated them fundamentally as property. Some owners granted or permitted slaves to accumulate money, increasing the possibility that they might eventually purchase or receive freedom. Manumission created a large population of freed men and women who could build businesses and families while maintaining obligations to former owners. A successful freed person might become prosperous, yet elite society could continue treating former enslavement as a permanent mark of lower status. The comforts celebrated in wealthy Roman life rested heavily upon coerced labor that historical monuments and elite writers often pushed into the background. A Roman seeking medical care might consult a trained physician, household practitioner, midwife, herbal seller, temple, family member, or unqualified stranger. Roman medicine combined observation and practical techniques with inherited theories about the body that modern science no longer accepts. Doctors treated wounds, set bones, performed limited surgery, prescribed diets, prepared medicines, and attempted to understand symptoms through available knowledge. Surgical instruments reveal considerable skill, but the absence of modern anesthesia, antibiotics, sterile procedures, and blood transfusion made operations extremely dangerous. Childbirth placed women at serious risk, despite the knowledge of experienced midwives who managed deliveries and common complications. Crowding, contaminated food, parasites, unsafe water, poor ventilation, and travelers arriving from across the empire allowed disease to circulate rapidly. Wealthy Romans could escape unhealthy neighborhoods, purchase better food, employ physicians, and recover in spacious homes or countryside villas. Poor residents often continued working while ill because rest meant losing wages, food, lodging, or the confidence of an employer. Religious healing and medicine were not always viewed as opposites, so a patient might use a remedy while also praying or making an offering. Death remained a familiar presence in Roman households, encouraging people to seek protection through family, medicine, ritual, community, and the gods. After the morning's work, many Romans visited public baths that combined hygiene, exercise, conversation, relaxation, business, and recreation. Entrance could be inexpensive, allowing people below the elite classes to enjoy facilities that would have been impossible inside their own homes. Bathing arrangements varied according to time and place, with men and women sometimes using separate areas or attending during different hours. A visitor might exercise first, leave clothing with an attendant, and then move through rooms maintained at different temperatures. Warm spaces prepared the body before hotter rooms encouraged sweating, while cooler pools offered a refreshing conclusion to the bathing sequence. Romans commonly cleaned the skin with oil and a curved tool known as a strigil rather than depending upon modern soap. Larger bath complexes might contain gardens, libraries, food cellars, exercise courts, fountains, artwork, and rooms for massage or social gatherings. The experience was supported by aqueducts, furnaces, underground heating, maintenance workers, attendants, and enslaved laborers, largely unseen by comfortable visitors. Theft remained a concern because clothing and valuables could disappear while their owner moved through the bathing rooms. The baths offered an extraordinary public luxury, but they also reflected Rome's characteristic mixture of engineering, sociability, inequality, and dependence upon labor. Romans could spend leisure time at theaters, amphitheaters, festivals, neighborhood gatherings, taverns, baths, and the enormous racing ground called the Circus Maximus. Chariot racing attracted passionate supporters who identified with competing teams and argued over drivers, horses, victories, and rival colors. A successful charioteer could become famous and wealthy, although the profession carried a constant risk of collision, injury, and death. Amphitheaters presented gladiatorial combat, animal hunts, executions, and other spectacles funded by emperors or officials seeking popularity and prestige. Gladiators included enslaved people, prisoners, condemned criminals, and volunteers who entered the profession for money, status, or personal circumstances. Not every contest ended in death, because trained gladiators represented financial investments whose skill made future performances valuable. Roman theater included comedy, tragedy, mime, music, dance, and popular entertainment suited to audiences with different tastes and social backgrounds. Seating arrangements at major venues reflected social hierarchy, placing spectators according to rank, gender, citizenship, profession, and legal status. Public entertainment created shared excitement, but it also displayed imperial power and taught audiences where Roman society expected each person to sit. For a few hours, however, the roar of the crowd allowed individuals to forget work, debt, cramped homes, family worries, and the uncertainty of urban life. Roman religion was woven into ordinary routines rather than confined to occasional worship inside monumental temples. Families honored household spirits, ancestors, and protective deities through small shrines, offerings, prayers, lamps, incense, food, and wine. Before important decisions, people might seek divine favor, consult signs, visit a temple, make a vow, or ask a specialist to interpret an omen. Public ceremonies connected religion with government because the security of Rome was believed to depend partly upon maintaining proper relations with the gods. Festivals interrupted work and filled the city with processions, sacrifices, performances, decorations, public meals, games, and temporary changes in social behavior. Rome absorbed deities and religious traditions from Greece, Egypt, Persia, the Near East, and other regions incorporated into the empire. Worshippers chose among many cults and practices according to family tradition, occupation, neighborhood, origin, personal experience, and promised forms of protection. Soldiers, merchants, sailors, women, enslaved people, and immigrants could each be drawn toward religious communities addressing their particular fears and hopes. Religious diversity did not always produce tolerance, especially when authorities believed a group threatened public order, traditional practice, or loyalty to Rome. For ordinary Romans, the divine world remained close, influencing health, travel, business, childbirth, weather, harvests, dreams, death, and household safety. The main meal usually arrived later in the day, although its size, timing, ingredients, and social meaning depended greatly upon wealth. An ordinary household might eat bread, porridge, vegetables, beans, olives, cheese, fish, fruit, and wine without elaborate ceremony. Wealthy hosts used dinner parties to display imported ingredients, decorated rooms, costly tableware, household servants, cultural knowledge, and valuable social relationships. Guests at elite banquets could recline on couches, while enslaved attendants brought a sequence of dishes and removed the remains. Music, poetry, conversation, dancers, games, and performances might accompany the meal, transforming dinner into carefully arranged social theater. Seating and serving order communicated rank, allowing a host to honor important guests or quietly remind others of their lower position. Beyond elite houses, residents purchased prepared food from taverns and street counters because many apartment rooms lacked safe or convenient cooking facilities. As daylight faded, oil lamps and torches produced limited pools of light, while smoke and the cost of fuel discouraged unnecessary illumination. Some residents continued working, drinking, gambling, celebrating, or traveling, while others secured doors against theft and climbed toward crowded rooms above the street. Rome did not become silent at night, because carts, animals, arguments, taverns, fires, footsteps, and distant voices continued beneath the darkness. Daily life in ancient Rome was not one universal experience, because the city contained extreme wealth, severe poverty, legal privilege, enslavement, cultural diversity, and social ambition. The same aqueduct that supplied an imperial bath also filled the public fountain, where a poor tenant waited to carry water upstairs. The same market offered rare imported delicacies to wealthy buyers and inexpensive bread or porridge to laborers counting their remaining coins. The same entertainment brought thousands together while assigning each spectator a place that reflected Rome's carefully maintained social hierarchy. Roman engineering made enormous urban life possible, but it never eliminated fire, disease, crowding, pollution, hunger, dangerous work, or unequal access to comfort. Family, friendship, religion, neighborhood, professional associations, patronage, and public spaces helped residents navigate a city too large for anyone to face entirely alone. Most Romans never commanded an army, addressed the Senate, met an emperor, or entered the historical stories later generations chose to preserve. They baked bread, repaired sandals, taught children, carried water, sold vegetables, cleaned houses, kept accounts, drove carts, and worried about tomorrow. Their ordinary labor sustained the capital whose temples, roads, laws, literature, and ruins would continue shaping the world long after their names disappeared. As the lamps grow dim across the sleeping city, we leave ancient Rome remembering not only its emperors, but the countless ordinary people who made it live.